Domestic violence against men. Hello, and welcome to Signpost for Living with Dr. Kirsten Hunter. We have got gorgeous Kristen Coggan here. Hey, hello darling.
How are you?
I'm good. So, domestic violence against men. When I just said that's our topic, because, you know, of course I gave you a lot of warning.
2 minutes.
Yeah, maybe. What was your immediate reaction?
Great. Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't get talked about enough.
And I think that this is reverse sexism.
Completely.
Yeah. So I, as a clinical psychologist, sadly, routinely come across domestic violence from women to men, and some men to men as well, of course, within domestic relationships, and the complexity that comes with that is truly extraordinary, and you know, I see them not coming to authorities and communicating. I mean, I could, in 24 years as a psychologist, did you not have been a psych for 24 years?
No. Well, I probably did, really.
Yeah.
It's like you've been doing it forever.
I know. But I could probably count 5 times that I've had a male come to the authorities. It's extremely rare. They just don't go to the authorities with it.
And so how does that compare? You won't know the number off the top of your head, but the number of patients or clients, what do you have? I don't know what you have.
Clients, yeah.
Clients that are men that are victims of domestic violence.
All the time. So we might have mild domestic violence, so that might be, domestic kind of dispute, verbal, and then the woman doesn't think much about coming and hitting at the man, pushing the man, slapping his face. Now that's pretty bad, you know. But then it goes all the way to we've got severe domestic violence where we've got actual, hitting with hard objects, cutting, the whole lot. And it's considered embarrassing to come and say, you know, my partner does this, or they've had bad experiences with the police, and the police have come and believed the woman.
Yes.
Sadly, that happens not too infrequently, and or the woman actually goes and and screams domestic violence against the man.
Yes.
When it's completely fiction. And I know that because I've seen both parties, and she's doing that to beat him to the punch, and then he gets accused of domestic violence when it's actually been her, and both parties have disclosed this to me. So, you know, I really deeply feel for men who don't have a voice, and it's complete bullshit.
I agree totally. And I don't know, I've known 2 people personally that have been in that situation.
Yep.
And they've been in it for a long time before anybody else knows about it. And they are so disempowered and so stuck, in inverted commas, and actually don't know where to go, don't know where to turn, don't know what to do. Because the female is also playing a game on the outside and has, a following thinking that there's, you know, it's either him or, it's not them.
Yeah. And it's so profoundly disrespectful, not only to men but to domestic violence, that's not gender based. You know, so you know, to cry wolf, and nothing's happened to them. You know, all those women who have genuinely experienced domestic violence, on that front, it's infuriating as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no place for it, no matter what side of the fence it's coming from.
No.
But I don't believe that men have the ability to speak up,
and you know,
and the resources and the support's just not openly there.
And I think there's just a lack of education.
Yes,
that it's not gender based. It's to do with personality. It's to do with power dynamics, and it's to do with temper and a desire to inflict harm and to intimidate and not to care about the harm on the other person. And that is not gender based. So it's not about who's the strongest sex.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Domestic violence is primarily psychological. Yeah. And this goes all the way to sexual abuse as well. I've had, sadly, men who, a common pattern, I don't know if you're aware of this, is that they might be away on a work function and the female is in a leadership role, and they go to an event, there's alcohol. She says, I'll come back to my room, but doesn't make it sound like it's got any tone to it. You know, we'll have a chat about whatever, or blah, blah, blah. And then turns up there and then gets into his space and starts to physically, sexually touch him. And he freezes because she's the boss. And also that's a standard response, fight, flight, faint, freeze, when we're in that crisis point. And then she's touching him and fondling him. He gets an erection, and then he feels incredibly betrayed by his body. He feels like he is becoming an active participant when it's actually an involuntary physical reaction. And then he even ejaculates, and then he feels incredibly confused.
Yes.
And doesn't know what is.
And how do you tell that story to somebody?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And while he might not get involved with any physical kind of, interaction with her per se, it looks like she's pleasuring him, but she's violating him. And, I'd love to say that was a one-off, but I've actually come across that quite a lot.
Wow.
Yeah. So, domestic violence, sexual assault, that whole spectrum, we really need to understand that it's psychological and it's not about physical strength. It's quite extraordinary, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And we've got a lot of movement, we were talking earlier, about increased awareness with regard to, individuals' rights. And it has to be individuals' rights, not just women's rights.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think there's such a focus on domestic violence.
Which is great.
In our country, people are becoming so much more aware of how prevalent it is and what the signs are and what you should do. And obviously society's come a long way in the last 50, 100 years, where people used to turn a blind eye and shut the blinds and curtains and ignore it. I mean, I don't...
Well, women and children were considered shackles. And anything that happened, I think this was 1980, prior to that, women were considered shackles and children. So if any harm that happened in the home was legal and it was your own possession, you could do as you pleased. So when Whitlam came in, I discovered this last week, when Whitlam came in, Gough Whitlam, he made domestic violence within the home illegal. So it's quite shocking, isn't it?
Well, there you go. That's about 50 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I'm not that old. But yes. 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 It's very interesting.
It is. It is.
So, and with domestic violence, while we're at it, obviously there's the genuine cases, but I've also had a lot of people who are weaponising that term and, complete fiction or just domestic disputes and then calling it domestic violence when it's not. And that infuriates me as well because, of course, that takes away from when people are genuinely in this threatened circumstance of power and intimidation and, physical...
Exactly.
Physical, sexual, psychological coercion. Not
and
good.
It's also one of those accusations that one party can make against another party, and it sticks, whether it's right or wrong. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well,
like
yeah.
It's just there's a stigma to it, and it sticks, and people don't forget it, and
you're left defending that, and
and how can you?
That's the problem, isn't it? When it happens, it does happen behind closed doors, but when it doesn't happen, it's also gaslighting. Yeah, it's a very difficult area. So I guess, this is a bit of a heavy one, but I just really want to make the big point. Please don't focus on gender.
No, and get help if it's happening.
And there's some really scary women out there who are profoundly, unhealthy and quite predatory and don't have a conscience when they treat their men like punching bags.
There is.
On that light note, we can't really...
Yeah, can we finish this, poor buggers?
Shall we put the happy jingle on now?
Yeah, put the...
All
Sorry.
right. If you want to catch me online...
We do take this seriously.
We do. I laugh when it's just so sad, right? Website, KirstenHunterAuthor.com. All sorts of things there. Facebook and Instagram, Kirsten Hunter Author. Thank you, darling. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Lighter note next time.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. See ya.
Bye.